Hello Gears and Gaming fans, and welcome to Gears Intel. I am your host KDB, as always, here for just another quick check-in, debrief, reaction thing style video. Nothing special, nothing major. Oh, except there is something major. We had some huge news last weekend, and that is there is a new Gears of War game on the way. You already know this. The news is out there. Gears of War E-Day was revealed to, well, massive fanfare, unanimous positivity, and yeah, we're a week out from it, and I am just still buzzing. I'm on a high from the whole thing, and we of course did our Gears Intel E-Day reveal reaction discussion. That episode is out now. It's on our YouTube channel and podcast platforms, so please do go and check it out if you haven't already. David, Alex, and myself all gave our thoughts on the trailer, how we felt, how we reacted, and what we think it means for Gears going forward. It's all very exciting, and yes, I'm still excited a week later. But why am I here today? Well, there has been a bit of an update. So through the course of the week, there was obviously lots of questions flying around and theories and just general, excitement as well. It's so good seeing all the Gears content creators come alive, and all the fans flood to find out Gears news and celebrate Gears. We continue to have lots of awesome reactions and interactions from you guys over on our Gears Intel Twitter account. So if you're not following us there already, please do come and get involved in the conversation. But yes, after the week, we have some news. We have some official updates from the coalition themselves. And this comes by the way of Corden and an article for Windows Central. Now, I'm not going to read the whole article here, and I'm not going to tell you everything that's in the article, but I'm just going to pick out a few key things that really caught my attention and have got me excited. Because despite the awesome Xbox Wire article we got, which talked about Gears, there were still a few maybe things left unsaid, which is fine. We're happy for things to be revealed in time, but there's definitely a few little, what I would call juicy morsels, tidbits, whatever, stuff from this article that answered a few questions that we might have had during the week. Now, one of the biggest questions that came away from the reveal was if Gears of War E-Day is gonna have multiplayer. There was no mention of multiplayer in the Xbox Wire article and nothing from the devs on Twitter. There was also some confusion or concern during the week where the Gears of War E-Day game went up on Steam. Is that right? I'm not a PC player and I don't use Steam, so I'm not fully aware of how that all works and how that store works. But people were pointing out that in the specs of the game or the features of the game, any reference to multiplayer or PvP was removed. So people thought, hang on, does this mean the game is not going to have multiplayer? So Corden directly asked Matt Cersei from the Coalition about this. By the way, I'm still not sure if I'm pronouncing Matt Cersei's name right. I'm so sorry if I'm getting that wrong. I'm someone that's had my name pronounced incorrectly my entire life, and I know it's really frustrating. So I just need someone to say his name in an interview, and then I'll get it. Anyway, so Jez asked Matt directly if the Gears of War was going to have multiplayer, because this question was coming up. And the quote we have is, "I would say this is the next mainline Gears game," Cersei emphasized. "Gears has a pretty clear DNA for gameplay modes, so you can probably anticipate where we'll be going with E-Day." That's obviously not a direct confirmation or denial, but I think it's safe to say multiplayer is safe, multiplayer isn't going anywhere, and Gears of War E-Day will have multiplayer. Now, as we know, Gears of War is also famous for other modes, and there's been different modes across the various titles. More specifically, though, is of course Horde mode, which has been present in Gears of War since Gears of War 2. And I just think we can take from this comment that whether we are getting an exact Horde mode or the multiplayer that's exactly the same as we're used to, I don't know. It still remains to be seen. I'm sure they will be freshening things up in certain ways, but I think from this we can absolutely take that there will be more modes than just the campaign in the game that's coming out. They're calling this the next mainline game. It's not a spin-off. It's not a Gears Tactics. It's not a Gears of War Judgment. Though Judgment, of course, did have multiplayer, but that multiplayer was very different, for good and bad, for better or worse. But I can take this as gospel. I think they know. I think if multiplayer wasn't going to be in the game, they also wouldn't confirm that now because they don't want to, kill the buzz. So it would be disappointing if there's no multiplayer. Personally, for me, I love the multiplayer. I've moved kind of away from it in recent years. I'm getting old. I'm getting slow. My reactions aren't there. So I love the campaign and I'm more of a horde guy these days. But either way, the modes coming to Gears of War E-Day, I'm pretty sure we're going to have the campaign and some kind of PvP and PvE in the form of horde or new modes that they make. Who knows? Looking forward to it either way. We also have another quote here from Nicola Fawcett, who is the brand director at the Coalition. And she talks about the whole origin story of E-Day. And she says, E-Day is an origin story. It's the origin story of the bond that defines the franchise, which is Marcus Phoenix and Dom Santiago's friendship. When you first meet them, they're not the same Marcus and Dom you know. In Gears 1, they've already spent 14 years fighting the Locust. And of course, we touched on this on the podcast. This is an awesome place to start the story, or to go for the story route for this game. And it makes perfect sense. It's friendly to new fans who might be put off by a Gears 6 and think, well, have I got to play through 5 whole games to understand and jump on board here? And it's friendly to old fans like us, like me, who have been there since the beginning, but have not seen this story fully depicted and fully play out. It's something that we've asked for years, and we're actually getting it. So to get the E-Day origin story is something that OG fans have wanted and is very welcoming and new fan friendly because we're starting at the beginning. It's also funny to think that even E-Day is not really the origin story of Gears of War. Of course, the whole Pendulum Wars, which was 80 years, is that right? 80 years of history there that went on for. You could, in theory, say the beginning of the Pendulum Wars is the origin story. We have stuff that goes even further back. And maybe one day we'll see that. I'd love to see a Pendulum Wars game. I think that would be a great route to go at some point. I know David has constantly talked on the podcast about that being a route he'd like to see as well. But here we're getting the origin story of the Locust and the origin story of that relationship between Marcus and Dom. Nicole also went to talk about the horror, something that we've been yearning for. Gears 4 and 5 had touches of horror, and actually it's quite funny because even when you think about to Gears 1, 2 and 3, although there are moments of horror and there's particular stuff that sticks out for us, like the Berserker and even the opening of the game, the original game with the bodies hanging and stuff like that. The wretches are horrific. There's other things across the franchise in games 1 to 3 that are definitely horror inspired and thematically horrifying. But it's always really been an action shooter with horror and sci-fi elements. It feels like here with E-Day, from the Xbox Wire article and what they're saying in this new report from Jez Corden, that they are really pushing for that horror stuff and they're going to amplify it. And Nicole says, you can see what we've wanted to reposition the Locust drone as actual scary, terrifying creatures. People remember Gears of War 1 having these high moments of horror and being scared. We're going back to the darker, grittier vibe that people have in their mind when they think about the franchise. This is music to my ears, and I know it's music to many Gears of War fans' ears out there as well. I really enjoy Gears 4 and 5. The horror has slowly petered out more and more. There's some great atmosphere in Gears of War 4. I recently tweeted about it. I recently replayed through Gears of War 4. There's some great moments. Gears 5 has an awesome sequence in the dark with wretches as well. Yeah, there is some scary stuff, but it was a lot more bombastic in those games and took it more away from the grittier feel that I wanted. And the robots, they're not that gritty, let's be honest. Here, they're saying clear as day, clear as night. I don't know what I'm talking about when I say clear as night, but I've said it now. They are going back to those darker, grittier moments, that darker, grittier vibe that we all know and love. And I'm so excited. The article also says here, Nicole emphasised that while they are ramping up the horror, they aren't abandoning the franchise's emotional hooks, recalling some of the game's most painful sequences involving Dom and his wife Maria from Gears 2 or the climax from Gears 3. That's in our DNA. The cool thing about Gears is that it can saddle both of those things. You can tell dark and horrific stories about human suffering, but also offer hope and what it feels like to have the squad at your back. And then having moments where you can chainsaw a locust's head off and have it feel so fucking good. Awesome. It's so nice to hear these words being said. It's like we've all been talking about this for years, and to know that they get it, to know that this team is re-establishing what they want for Gears and ticking all those boxes, yeah, I'm still having to pinch myself because this is what we want. And maybe some people out there don't want it. Maybe some people want it to go a different route. That's fine. That's fine. This is what I wanted, and I am loving that the Coalition are coming out and saying this stuff. It's really what I want to hear. Comments from the Coalition also go on to talk about the Chainsaw Lancer and the creation of that, and that we're probably going to see the creation of that in this game, which is really exciting. They know that Gears of War isn't Gears of War without chainsawing, so to see that develop and how that comes to pass is so exciting, and I can't wait to see how the game presents it to us. There's also some mention in this article about the different things that Gears 4 and particularly Gears 5 tried. Now, we all know that Gears 5 kind of dabbled in open world a little bit, and side quests and upgrades and the upgrading of Jack. Stuff that on the podcast we've been critical about. You know, as I've mentioned already in this video, there's a lot to love about Gears 5. I think our podcast panel unanimously thought that the open world stuff didn't really work in Gears 5, and we wanted to see them step back a little bit and strip things back and go back to the more linear, enclosed feeling of those original games. So, Matt Cersei did expand on this thing in the interview with Jez Corden. He says, "We think we have a pretty good handle on what makes Gears feel great, but that doesn't mean we have to return Gears to its simplest possible version. There's some things we tried that didn't work great, and some things we tried that actually turned out pretty good. We know that there's this core, linear, against all odds, that thing that flows through it. But there's room for us to play with that. We've got a whole city to play with. Gears of War E-Day is going to feel like a fucking kick-ass Gears game, like the one people have in their head. But it's going to feel like a new game too. It's going to have a new feel. It's going to feel fresh and good at the same time." So there we go. From that quote, I'm kind of taking away that, okay, it's going back to a lot of those vibes, but that doesn't mean it needs to be strictly as linear and, like he says, simple. We may still get some open world in this game. That ending shot of the trailer, the big vista of the city just crumbling and the corpses walking through, as he says, we've got a whole city to play with. So this may not be as linear as we would assume. There could be different routes to go. Could even be some side quests. I don't know. I'm not against it. I think I'm not against an open world or open hub nature for Gears. I just think as long as you've got all those other things that we want, you know, the horror, the brotherhood, the squad, you don't want aimlessly kind of traversing around on the skiff type deal. It would be nice to know that if there is a big map to explore, it's packed with stuff and you're not just wandering around in an empty desert. Now, there was some other news floating around this week about a possible 2025 release date, but there's nothing concrete about that. And I think I'm not really worried about the release date right now. As I said on the main podcast discussion about the reveal, I feel so happy and satiated with the confirmation of what's next. I'm fine with waiting now. If it's a year, if it's 2 years, if we keep getting information and updates like this article, that's great. So I really hope the Coalition keep us in the loop. The suspense is killing me, but I'm happy to wait and so excited to learn more about Gears of War E-Day along the way. So I do recommend you go and read this full article yourself. Link will be in the video description. It's awesome to get these little bits of details and effectively this confirmation of multiplayer, which I know was a big question in people's minds over the past few days. We're of course going to continue to cover the news as it comes. We're not really a breaking news channel, but we do react to things. And if I've got time to sit down, hit record and just ramble about Gears for 15 minutes, kind of like what I've done today, I'm going to do it. So we'll do some bigger podcast episodes on it as well. We've got more stuff to come as we move forward and continue covering the books and gameplay and everything we do here on the channel, please do go and check out our previous episodes of the podcast. We've got big retrospectives for Gears of War Judgment, for Gears Tactics, for the Rise of Ram. What else have we done? The Survivor's Log, and then other just general conversations around Gears of War as well. Subscribe to the YouTube channel, like the video, follow us on Twitter at gears_intel. You can find the audio versions of the podcast and these videos, which I'm trying to make sure goes on the audio feed as well, on podcast feeds, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and all that kind of stuff. Please rate and review as well, all the stuff you're supposed to do on the internet. We are so fucking excited about Gears of War right now. It feels like, like I say, I'm still on cloud 9. I haven't come down from the clouds since that announcement. And I know the guys are excited, and I've seen so much excitement from the fandom. Just so much positivity, so much love out there for Gears, and incredibly excited about the next year and a half, whatever. That's going to do it for today. Thanks for watching or listening as always. Until next time, remember the fallen.